morning, everybody, and welcome. We are after 1:15. Please be aware that we are being recorded lawfully. And first thing I want to say is thank you for voting for me. I'm not sure that I will appreciate it all the time, but I will do my best. Apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Council Blackburn.
Is it? We've got approve any apologies.
Yes. You can choose to approve them or not. If you don't approve them and they miss 6 months, then they're automatically disqualified.
Yeah. Disclosure of interests.
Shall I go for this? I can do. This is with reference to item 18 on the agenda, correspondence received. This is on page 15. An email I sent to Claire Clark on the 9th of May hasn't been listed, and a similar email the previous month was also not listed. These emails and other verbal inquiries relate to the Council's resolution on the 6th of December last year to grant access via recreation lane to the plot of land that my wife and I own. That came about after 3.5 years when the Council initiated its review of access for properties on recreation lane, and 3 years after the Council instructed its solicitor to inform us that we must not access the rear of our property by recreation lane. 21 weeks after that resolution was passed, on the 10th of February, a draft deed of right of access was sent to our solicitor. Within 10 days, our solicitor, having had some discussions with the client...
This is on the disclosure of interest. This is not to do with the...
Quite right.
Please don't interrupt.
I'm sorry.
I am talking about an item on the agenda.
Well, then we talk about it at the right time. But this is item 2, disclosure
Well,
of
I'm
interest.
disclosing an interest.
Well, you just disclose it.
I am, I'm disclosing it.
No, well, you go on.
We will deal with it completely then.
Sorry?
We will deal with it completely.
I'm not staying.
I mean,
I'm sorry. If you don't want to hear the rest of it, that's fine by me.
No, I'm saying that we will deal with it completely later. You have disclosed your interest.
Right.
Fine, that is the point.
Okay. Well, I find myself in conflict with the Council and its leadership, and lacking confidence in its ability to deliver its own decisions. The cost in legal fees, time and mental health has been substantial, and I've informed my solicitor that I will recuse myself from all future business of the Council until he notifies me that the completed document is in his hands.
I have actually completed it. We have completed it, and I've got a copy for you tonight. So I don't.
He hasn't got it, though.
No, but I can scan it and send it to him.
Well, I've had quite a lot of promises over the last 9 months.
Which I've signed it this evening.
Signed.
Okay, thank you. But why it has to take 9 months is quite beyond my understanding. So do you want me to stay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
If you feel you want to, but I can assure you that I've signed it.
right, good.
17A.
Okay, noted. Ongoing matters include rec lane access. I too am affected by that if it becomes a relevant
Yes,
current matter. It is merely an ongoing matter. Should it be raised, then I will excuse myself.
privacy and access and regulation. I doubt it's going to get talked about tonight, but
If it is,
if it is, I'll disclose them.
I have to copy that as well.
We'll record it.
well, public questions?
Garages. We've got another letter.
If I
We've got another letter about the garages. They want to knock the other garages down. The lock-up garages. Make a car park.
Okay, nothing's been brought to our attention.
Tony is the letter.
Which garages are them? Sorry.
The lock-up
The
ones.
lock-up ones?
Is that the standalone ones?
Yes.
Huh?
Not the brick built ones, the other ones. I mean, the point is, the letter ordinance states that they're going to knock them down to create 11 parking spaces. And there's, I think there's 13 garages. But I don't know. I mean,
What's achieved?
nothing is achieved.
But who's, I live at the far end of South View,
Yes, right.
and I'm going to park my car half a mile away.
Careful, Graham, because you're in the garages there.
Oh, I don't want to come to insure my car.
What do you
Is your car still at the same address? I got this new roof or doors on.
do?
This is not a matter on the agenda. We will take note of it and we will inquire as to what's going on.
I've been asked if we can have an update meeting. She did email yesterday to say, could she have a catch up? And she's suggesting Friday the 17th at 11 AM, although she did say that, obviously we can, if people can't attend during the day, she could arrange an evening meeting. But I haven't had anything other than that to say, I haven't been sent a copy of the letter or anything.
Chair, they were going to arrange another meeting in the evening for all councillors and they've never done it. So they're an absolute shower.
Yes.
The she said when I phoned her up that the Parish Council was all for it. I says, well, they told me that they
I
weren't.
don't think so.
Yeah. But that's just what I...
Yes, well, I mean, I have had other dealings with the lady who's dealing with this. And, I think that's enough to say.
All we can do is inquire as to what's going on.
Right.
Well, I mean, as for a daytime meeting, I think we should push for an evening meeting when the majority of people can attend.
Yes.
Councillors.
I think we should, but I can attend on the 17th.
I'll make time.
Yeah.
If it has to be during the day.
So we would be able to do the 17th at 11.
It's Friday, definitely.
Next Friday.
Yeah.
It's a week on Friday.
I don't know. I will learn on that. Yeah. Have a look.
I just think it's a crying shame that we've had two summers in a life and death situation, then this summer they've pushed this onto her. There's no consideration at all.
No.
Yeah, I can definitely do the 17th.
What time of day would it be?
11 o'clock.
Yeah.
I might come, but I can't promise. Can't promise.
So is that
Until
enough?
12:30. Without children.
Yeah, well, I guess it will only be an hour. She hasn't said, but
Can we get a copy of that? Have we got a copy of that too? It'd be good to see.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but knocking down to make parking spaces was not part of the first
No.
meeting,
No.
was it?
No.
They asked me what we used the garages for, and they were going to find an alternative.
That's what they said to us. They said that they're only doing this because a lot of the council garages were dilapidated, disused, and we can quite clearly prove that they aren't.
Not here,
And
just one where the roof still was flooded.
Of course, they didn't want to put it down, did they?
But over there, they couldn't put a new door and Bill Mackay's did a few weeks ago.
Thank you. Any other public questions? Greg?
Yeah, read the correspondence that you've got listed as the 20th of 5th 22 email regarding council's DPI. Can I have it noted for the minutes, as well as being in regard to Councillor Hutt's DPI, the email is also a request for an apology from the PC, and that while we say a response has been sent, that is just an acknowledgement of the email and a confirmation that it's been sent to the councillors. I've had no formal response to either points in the email yet. Another one, I think it was a shame the council didn't include my request for the to either freeze or reduce the precept on the agenda as I emailed out for this month's agenda. Those that are on the Finance Committee know there's a risk you may be forced to freeze the precept anyway, so this was an opportunity for the council to appear proactive. I appreciate the reason I was given, but was it still not worth bringing it up at the meeting so the whole community could know and understand that reasoning that I was given? And also, the person requesting it on the agenda, they may have additional information to help make that decision. The opportunity to ask them those questions has been missed by not including them. So can I ask whose decision it was not to include it on the agenda? Was it the clerks or did the chair actually say in that field?
Greg, it was mine. I did circulate to all the councillors and asked for any comments, and given that we have to balance the budget, it's not something that the council can agree to at this point, to freeze the precept for next year, because we haven't done the calculation of our expenditure yet. So it isn't something, it can go on the agenda at the time, it can be something that the Finance Committee consider and bring to the Parish Council with a suggestion to freeze it or not freeze it, but it's not something that we can take a decision on at the current time.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, but I mean that could have been discussed and so the whole community knows. I'm happy now because the whole community knows about the reason for it, which makes sense.
So there's no decision to be taken, so we just have a discussion point with no possible decision outcome because it couldn't be taken tonight because we don't have the budget figures for next year. So unless you're going to bring the budget calculations forward, that it would be effectively a meaningless discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At the last Parish Council meeting it was agreed to try and put a notice into the Bridge magazine, but for the annual parish meeting, but there was no advert in the annual parish meeting in the Bridge magazine. I was just wondering why that was.
That was my fault. I sent 3 emails to the Bridge and I missed attaching the copy of the meeting by pure accident, and I didn't see the response that said, was there supposed to be an attachment on this, until it was already at print. So that was my error.
Also, there's a question within Finance in 6 and 9 and 16, if it was all right to ask the questions if they don't come up within the meeting.
So can she ask the
Can I
questions
ask
at the
them?
time?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Presumably your questions will be relevant.
They'll be related to but they might
Yes.
be discussed at the time.
Minutes of the previous meeting. I wasn't here, so I can't.
I've had a couple of basically typographical corrections. Councillor Walton has pointed out that at item 8, appointment of members to existing committees and working groups, I have incorrectly listed the contact working group members. That should read Councillors Evans, Souter and Walton. And then below the table, Mrs. Kazoziak stated that she has been co-opted to the Biodiversity Plan Committee. And then at item 16, updates from committees and working groups, with reference to A, the Biodiversity and Climate Change Committee. In the second paragraph, Councillor Kazoziak had already been co-opted at the point she made her comment, so it should read a committee member instead of reading a resident, so I'm happy to put those in. And then I've passed you a comment from a resident, so it's from our former councillor Lynns, in relation to item 5. I had put in a short descriptive statement about the statement made by Councillor Lynns. He's asked if we could either remove that item, so the item in square brackets starting with Councillor Lynns, or that we expand it to say, Councillor Lings resigned, stating that in his opinion there had been a determined effort by some councillors to prevent one of the candidates being elected. He then went on to warn the council not to believe everything they had been told by one councillor. They had email proof that the same councillor had misled them. So what I'm asking the council is, would you rather remove those, remove the statement? It's the second sentence where I've said councillors noted for the record they were not aware of any campaigns for or against. So I either remove that sentence or I put the expanded version in.
Well, that's covers what was said. That.
Do we want it recorded verbatim?
I mean, it's still not verbatim, but it's an expanded version of what I put of his comments and then our response.
It's what the councillors feel.
And that's what I'm asking.
And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that no explains fully what happened.
Unfortunately, it has co-opted, whereas councillor, the former chair, actually used the word election.
Should the public be discussing this?
I mean, I think what, sorry.
We are recording, we are looking into what the minutes need to do, which is a reasonable summary of what happened.
Yes.
I think if there is objection to something, as in it's missing, something pertinent missing, better more information than not, and as this could be visited later and be scrutinised, I would think better more than less.
I agree.
So we record this comment in full. All those in favour? Finance.
Just finally, I do believe, like Greg said, we had a dissatisfaction with the election rather than the blocking. Is it okay to ask?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. I looked back at the video. Did you say you had a dissatisfaction with the election?
Initially, part of it, the first part was yes, I felt that the actual election was a smear campaign against one of the councillors.
Right.
But then I felt there was an effort, not by all councillors, I didn't say all councillors, but I felt there was an effort to exclude or to try and prevent one of the nominations being co-opted.
Can I ask, did you feel this was happening in the...
No, I felt it had already happened.
In the election, did you mean the election last May?
The election last May was a smear campaign. I'm not. You can go onto Facebook, but if you just scroll back through his Facebook and Felton Thursday Message, you can quite clearly see there was a smear campaign against one of the candidates. In fact, a couple of the candidates.
Did that involve anybody that is here today? That smear campaign that you're describing?
I think yes, there's somebody on the council now at the moment that was involved in that, or said comments which could be construed. That's just my opinion, again I'm saying. But I felt that there was some collusion amongst some councillors to prevent a candidate from being elected. And like I say, it's just my feeling, but I just couldn't be on the council when
Sorry,
it was going on.
One
you're
specific...
saying election there, but do you mean co-option?
Well, the first part of the election, and the co-option, yes, sorry, for the second part.
Coming back to what you said about what you saw on Facebook, can you categorically state that a councillor,
I need to go back and read it all again.
if there was, that is something that shouldn't have happened, and we need to know. If you care to check, please.
Yes, I will check.
One way or the other. Thank you. Are we sorted?
Yep.
On the previous minutes? Finance.
Chair, we put the agreement.
I beg pardon.
Agree the minutes.
Agree.
Approve the minutes.
Learning on the job. Do we approve the minutes then?
As amended.
As amended.
Thank you.
All in favour? Finance. Over to Clark.
So, nothing very big to report, to be honest. The insurance looks like we've got a negative amount, but that's only because what I've done is allocated half the budget for each item at the moment because we haven't had the full amount for precept yet. I don't think there's got any questions, I haven't really anything particular to draw your attention to.
Just the public questions, if I can raise it at this point.
If you've got a point to make.
What's to do with the financing. This has the format of this document changed in this putting the 50% allocated budget? So that's a new change to
Yeah,
it.
because when I was doing, because we get, the precept gets received by us in two equal amounts, one comes in April and one comes in September. So if you allocate the 100% of what we've allocated in the budget in there, the end figures don't add up because effectively you're having to use, you're using general reserves money to pay in the part of the precept that hasn't arrived yet. So 50%, when we get to September, I will change that to be 100% of the allocated budget because that's when we receive the second half of the precept. At the moment, we could choose to spend our full budget in June for a particular item, but we haven't received the second half of the precept, so the second part of the allocated budget would have to be used from general reserves and then put back into general reserves when it got to September.
So the £780 shortfall.
That's not. It is a short. It's a shortfall.
Yeah, but so is that coming out of the general reserves?
Yeah. So I should maybe I'll move that.
But there's nothing shown in the transfer of funds.
No, you're right. I need to correct that. Thank you.
Because the figure now in the general reserves, that can't be correct.
No, it should have gone down by that amount. You're right.
And just a second question on the same subject, really.
Yeah.
So you're doing that for the Parish Council, but you're not doing that for the cemetery accounts? Because the cemetery hasn't received any donation, contributions yet.
No, it hasn't. And the cemetery has got the money that comes from the cemetery, the 3 constituent councils from the cemetery. Although we kind of treat it as a bit of we treat it as the equivalent of a precept, but it's actually money on account against expenditure because, strictly speaking, if you're apportioning all of the income and expenditure, every time I get a bill, I should divide it and bill each 3 councils. But we basically run the cash flow out of general reserves, and then when those contributions are made, that's their payment against any expenditure which has been allocated to their share. Yeah, I'm happy.
Any further points? To authorise payments, page 13. Payment for approval. S. Wilson rent for allotments. So that's 3 to 16 production staff salaries. For what period is the staff salary?
It's now from the 10th to the 10th.
1 month.
But that's myself and one coach, sorry. It's high because it's myself, but it's also Peter, including the payments for Davison's obelisk and maintenance of the War Memorial.
those in favour?
The one, just quick check, the one for the food production, was that something missed off?
Oh, sorry, it's because I've missed the VAT.
Sorry.
So I paid the £75 cost, and I had, for some reason, I just looked at the cost line and I haven't looked at the bottom where obviously the VAT got added in. So it's now just a single payment for the VAT.
Finances, accounts and audit for the year ending. Over to you.
Yeah, just to defer, we are going to have to unfortunately have an additional meeting. I have, Lindsay and I met with the internal auditor, we were there about an hour and a half, discussing various bits with him. He has sent me some additional just queries that's arisen from his check of the financial papers, so I'm putting together what he needs, but that's not ready, and we need to approve that before we look at the rest. So we are unfortunately going to have an additional meeting to look at this item 6 because it has to be approved by the 30th.
A date.
I think we should go towards the end of the month just to give Patrick enough time in case anyone else pops up after I've sent him the information he needs. I mean, I think I sent all of the papers round, so you've all seen at least the draft accounts and everything. It's just obviously we're waiting.
I've got the ABAR form.
Yes, yeah, we've had all of that, yeah. So it's just I need to conclude the internal audit with Patrick. It was with the agenda papers. I was on that email, there's a lot.
Suggested date.
Assuming the hall's free, what about the 20th, which is a fortnight?
Monday.
I know that.
Can we get the hall, do we know?
I will not be available on the 20th. I have a birthday, which I don't feel like celebrating, but I probably should.
Definitely should be taking the finances anyway on it.
Well, happy birthday to the
So that wouldn't be an ideal day for me.
I don't know if anybody else has a preference. I mean, do you want to go ahead on the 20th without?
Well, I don't know.
I won't be able to make it either.
Or about the 22nd?
So I think that's it for the speed.
22nd,
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
What time are we looking at?
I guess this, I don't really mind. It's up to you. I mean, we can arrange this by email. I just thought it might be useful to.
Is there a problem with the following week? Because I mean, we're dependent on Patrick producing the internal audit
The 27th.
and distributing it.
Yeah, the 27th I think would be okay. It is, I think, we would need to make sure that everything we could definitely sign off then because otherwise we'll run out of time.
When is it? When does it have to be
The
submitted?
30th.
30th. Okay.
So what I mean is the 27th would be okay, but it wouldn't give us time to put another meeting in if we did encounter a problem.
Such as.
I don't know, no, I'm just being
She's being
in
pedantic.
the worry ward.
I prefer the week before, if it's all possible.
The 20, you prefer the 20th.
Yeah. well,
Hands
every
up
day
for the 20th. Who would roll out the 20th?
Quite
I'm
happy for
going
that.
for the 20 or 22nd or 27th.
Not likely to be here.
What do we go for?
22nd.
The Wednesday.
Confirm with, you get the hall.
The hall's free, the hall potentially it isn't free because it's got explorers in.
20th?
Yeah, the 20th.
20th. Yeah.
Okay. I'll put, I
after the first day.
could put a booking in for the 20th and the 27th if the hall is with me doing that provisionally and then we can. Okay, thank you.
Felton surgery. We've bashed smashed this around left, right and centre. In my opinion, a summary is we have 3 outstanding queries. There's the footpath land to the north and east of the patch, which...
North and west.
Sorry, north and east.
Oh, yes.
Whether or not it is settled before we sign the land over, I don't see that it really matters. If county are going, we understand county are going to take it over. The northern boundary, I don't think there is a query. If you look at the maps, the boundary steps away north from the fence line, showing that it includes the majority of the Bellways land. And to the west, the query with the red line on the map, and where that falls in the hedge, I think is simply where Bellways' original map have picked up from the original farmland map. It certainly couldn't be used as any sort of ransom strip. Anybody want to add anything on that? Any reason why we shouldn't go ahead and sign for the land?
I think it should be done as soon as possible.
Exactly.
Sooner rather than later.
With the plan that we've got, with the existing line.
I presume we've heard nothing more from the Sure.
I think that that should be sent to them. I think that should be sent to the Sure, just to push, see what's happening.
Yes, but that doesn't affect what
No,
we decide now,
but
does it?
I just...
Yes. I think the Sure will just say, we won't get any further information from the Sure, because they will just spout whatever the doctors are saying.
But yeah, the point you made then, Sue.
Just, could you clarify the public footpath in the council, the county council, in terms of they haven't adopted the section that goes out of the estate, but you're maintaining, they are going to maintain it?
Can you summarise what we
As far as I understand, when Greg had his meeting with the representative from County Council, they said that they intended that it had been adopted and they had taken responsibility in 2 different maps, because part of it was recorded on their highways map and part of it was recorded on their prow map, but that overall they accepted that they had responsibility for the entire thing. Now he did say, Greg, do step in if I'm wrong, but he did say that he could potentially look to get the highways part also recorded onto the public right-of-way map, but that wouldn't be a quick thing to do, and it would just be, you know, it could be done to correct the record, but was unnecessary because it was also on the highways, it was already on the highways map.
I sent you the email which said that it is part of the prow, so it is them that will have the responsibility to maintain it.
Yeah. But they just haven't recorded it all on the same map.
Just to clarify, the council don't maintain public right-of-way land on private land.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Can we...
The public footpath that goes north of...
So across the farmer's field, where
that's-
it goes across the farmer's field, are you trying to tell me that council maintain that?
Don't try to be picky.
Not picky.
They have put their gates, Chair. The council puts all the gates in, all the customer gates. And if there is any obstructions on the footpath, they do their best to clear them.
That's all.
And if there is a farmer's field where there is a problem, they charge the farmer, or the farmer has to clarify or clear it. If he doesn't, the council clear it and charge the farmer.
So
In my personal opinion, the situation with the surgery is delicate. Should Assura come back with figures to the cost of the bill, the NHS say not viable, then the whole thing could go back to county, and they might reconsider the whole thing from scratch, and we lose use of the land. So the sooner we get it signed over, the better. So, as this is important, can I have a vote, please, for we sign up for the land?
With the existing plan.
Standing item report from County Council of Felton.
None received.
Update from committees and working groups. The rec field is progressing with various work on them, what we do with the mugger and the play park, and the contractors are keeping the boundaries pushed back. Play park weeds that were sprayed have been stripped.
Claire and I have got a meeting on Friday with suppliers of play park equipment.
First, yeah, and I've got a few emails back.
It will be a very preliminary meeting to get them to have a look at our ideas and give providers cost before we put that public consultation. And I'm also speaking to somebody local that does that type of work as well.
Any other committees, working groups?
Cemetery Committee met on the 24th of May, and with our AGM, and we appointed as chair Greg Anderson from Thornley and Moore was vice chair, and we discussed various things happening in the assembly, and after the meeting we all went and had a meeting in the cemetery to consider all the work that's going to be taking place.
I trust everybody managed to come out of the cemetery.
With regard to the cemetery, back in October, I think it was, the cemetery committee agreed to put a top hole in over the big waste disposal to stop people using it, and so that they could use the green bin. There's still no top hole in, and the bin.
That is under review at the minute, and the committee decided to put a strong net over it rather than a sheet because of the problem with rain. Keeping the sheet clear. And it's unlimited.
Has the question been finished?
It hadn't, but obviously that answers the one question about the top hole, and then there's going to be a netting. So the netting itself have you considered the wildlife being caught in this netting as opposed to a top hole in?
This is a matter for the committee.
Well, that's one for them. So in terms of the green bin, has that been used for?
Yes.
Sorry, could we have the whole question? Because I don't understand your answers.
A green bin was purchased so that it could be filled with the waste from the cemetery, and also to the idea to empty the big waste.
That is all going to happen during the summer, yes.
Can I get clarification here? The green, are we talking recyclable waste?
No.
Green waste?
No, because it's mixed. It's a green domestic wheelie bin, but it takes mixed waste because it's the likes of the flowers, but then the flowers would be wrapped in cellophane, so it can't go to landfill. It has to go to it can't go to greenfill. It has to go to landfill. Yes. Yeah. It's just that.
Seems to be taking a long time to do anything.
Yeah, the bins have not been going out. There's been virtually nothing in the bin. I mean, the bin's out actually for the first time I've seen it out. It's still out, so it must have gone out late, so it hasn't got empty. It's just nothing seems to have happened at all with the green bin or the waste.
Well, as far as I know, it is put out.
Yeah,
I'll check with the committee.
it has been
I thought they were just getting it in. I they were collecting it themselves.
Who?
County.
Yes.
I don't think it needs to be put out. I think they said that originally that they would just go and empty it.
Fetch it. Fetch it
Because
from
it's
where.
beside the gate. Yeah, because
Well,
it's in.
it's beside the front gate.
It's outside the front gate tonight and it hasn't been emptied.
So I wonder if it's not been put back by them.
No, it hasn't been,
Put back, that's what it would be.
it has not been emptied, so it couldn't have been brought out by them, otherwise it would have been.
Well, I'll check with the caretaker,
And then previous times that I've looked, the waste has been the same waste in the bin since, like the previous week. I've got photographs, so it's just not being emptied properly. With regard to the mugger at Swarland from the Recfield Committee, I was wondering whether.
Chair, this is, I was giving you something to committee report.
Actually, sorry, but you'd finished. That's why I was
No, I
invited.
haven't finished it.
All right, well, enlighten us. So.
If you want to talk about the mugger, we'll be on the recreation.
It's sorry, we'll wait.
Again.
So as I say, that's what's happening at the minute. And it'll be a net that is used in gardens, which is recommended for this sort of work.
It's what you decided, what the committee's decided, what you're using.
We're also looking, sorry, just to interrupt Tony, we're also looking at the, I know that Fiona certainly has reported to me a couple of times when the wheel bin's blown over, just what you mentioned.
Yeah, so I'm going to put
We're going to see, look at
the
the
station at the garage for the
house, the wheel bin house, yeah. And we're also looking at the moment at the bench, there's a bench in there that's a memorial bench, and we're looking at solutions for dealing with that sort of request going forwards.
Can I suggest that we can look at the viability of having a green bin in there, so that if flowers don't have cellophane and things, they could go into a
Brown bin.
Is it brown? Well, these are brown bins that are different to everybody else. So,
I think you have to question it though, because if it is like Fiona says, it's the same waste in there and it's hardly being used, whether or not it's going to be worth us investing in a second wheel bin. And I mean, obviously I think it's more environment friendly for us to be composted, but if then you're investing in a plastic bin to hold that and it's just like a trickle of waste going into the one that we've got there cumulatively, I think you'd have to assess that of what was actually going in it over time. I think when things are taken off roads, I'm not sure people are going to take the time to process it and separate things out.
Having a general waste bin there's probably a good idea in case someone's going to visit a loved one for the coffee.
Yeah. So much as I would prefer with composting, I think we need to assess how quickly the refuse bin is filled.
With respect, I think the cemetery committee did take a wee while to actually look at this, and that was exactly what they came up with. In that, it was the business of separating the waste, and it was not likely to happen. So hence going for the.
Does it need somebody to nip up and put the bin out?
No, as I say, I don't think it does, because I thought, I will ask County Council, I was under the impression that County Council were happy to go in and bring it out. So unless they're looking and saying, oh, not much, we'll not bother.
Right. Oh no, that's not on.
I don't know, I will ask, because I was under the impression that County Council were doing it.
In my experience, that's unlikely.
It could be if it's
Any bin put out, they just
the next
automatically
speakers.
empty.
If you get a different crew on, sometimes we don't know.
Yeah, but I know, for instance, my bin at the start of Rochester, you can put it down sometimes they come in, they see do it, and they miss it on the way back out, and you can generally give them a phone.
So I'll ask, because I thought they were doing it.
So with respect, it was one of the questions that I was wanting to ask about the recreation. The recreation committee about the mugger surface, and was that had anybody contacted or been to see the mugger up at Swarland?
It is. Progress over the last month has been slow on pretty much anything for various reasons. I quite appreciate what you're asking, that we thoroughly look at the Swarland courts and what they've done. I have seen it, I've walked past them previously. I'm quite happy to Well, it is, we are seriously looking into getting that system fully costed for our mugger.
Yeah, it's totally in consideration, and we appreciate your suggestion of it and bring it to our attention, and it will be included in the public consultation. It's just that we have to consult on the other option as well.
Oh yes.
So,
but with respect, it's been I think around about 2 months, and the phone number there for the person that's actually put it in is there, and it only takes one person to meet that person at the school in Mugger to say, yes, this is possible and it would cost so much, or in fact, no, this is not possible, and then in which case you don't put it forward. So
we have taken on board the details of the people doing it.
Right,
And
and
I can
just
assure you we will be looking at it.
one other element, sorry,
It's all right, I'll take my turn.
well, I was going to say, one other element to take into account with this process is the biodiversity policy that you have as a parish council, and that I'm obviously a member of, is the procurement, I can't even say the word, the policy for building new elements to things within the parish, and the mugger surfaces and whatever else that goes on to the rec field would be included in this policy document. We have to look at the sustainability implications, whether purchasing renewable, recycled, environmentally low impact and recyclable materials. So this is something that actually has to be included within.
which it will be.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
that's fine.
Could we have an initial feedback on the likely costs for consultation on doing a refurbishment like they did in Newton, rather than going for the whole complete new surface by the next meeting? Gives us a month to...
We have had a report of the costs from Swarland, roughly 2,000.
But that's not for an up-to-date...
No, but it gives you an
Gives you the
indication.
ballpark figure, yes. So the thing that's outstanding is to check with that contractor whether they can do the same thing with our cooking ground, which can I ask whether we can have that by the next meeting? At least an initial indication.
I don't see why not.
And we'll move it along.
One
You've got some babysitting.
I still do
You've got
think
some babysitting.
that the
Oh.
public consultation is the most important part of it as well. So I don't see the point in doing that surface to it if that's not what the public in the village are looking for. You know?
Okay.
So that public consultation is important, just as well as if it's
Yeah.
circa 2,000 for that surface, if that's not what the public are wanting and they're not wanting to use that, what would the procedure?
Yeah, I think the public will have an opinion on how much we are spending on it and things, but it isn't meant to be down that when we're looking for external funding, but we've got a much better chance of getting, I mean, we could pay for that pretty much now, as far as what I can understand.
Yes.
You know, we could just do it. It's whether or not they want us to go for funding to get something better. But I think we will arrange.
So I think the public need all the options, what it's going to be used for and what it's going to cost. So
We have that in the research done on the considerably more expensive surfaces.
Yeah.
There's a quotation for annual maintenance, etc., which I believe there wouldn't be annual maintenance in the surface of Grand Park other than general caretaking. It is considerably cheaper. But it's whether or not, I mean, common sense would say that that is enough to then make the place usable again, but is it enough to get the interest of the rest of the...
Sustainable.
Yeah, and the last conversation we had at the rec field committee was on this, but I will speak to the contractor at Vinyl Park and get somebody to come down.
Bear in mind that the village was used to just seeing a tarmac surface there in all the time it's been there.
Yeah, so my impression is it doesn't get used a great deal, apart from kicking football around late at night.
Oh, it's not really.
Sometimes. So,
No, but that's
Which
that's
is
hardly surprising.
absolutely essential use for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's probably, I don't think us saying that that is just what, you know, it's just a thing when that might be the only thing that that particular age group have got to do in the evenings. And if it is going and kicking football around on a court which is lit, you know, rather than doing something else, it might be the very, very most important role that it has. And you know, I don't think we can demean that in any way, shape or form.
No, it wouldn't, but it would be good if it was used more,
Yeah, it would be
you
good
know,
if it was useful.
more accessible to more people
Yeah.
in different age groups.
Sorry, one thing. In relation to the use of it, there was currently kids up at the front of the Rochester estate using the grass area there with a set of goals, because I'm presuming the condition of there wasn't suitable for what they were doing. The goals have since been stolen, actually.
Yeah, I think.
Where? Sorry, where?
At the front of the Coquette Park estate.
Actually, on the surgery line.
Yeah.
It was just,
Probably
but
half
they, but the child involved lives very close. I mean, you know, his house is pretty much outside, and he'd taken his goals across, and then they've been taken.
Oh, that's sad.
It's really sad.
Right. Committees and working groups, we think we've chewed that pretty thoroughly. Recreation field to approve the purchase of a lorry load of play bar from Walton Landscapes. Walton Landscapes, are they the new people?
That's the company that Adam recommended.
Adams.
So I spoke to them and asked them for a quote for 40 cube of play bar, and they sort of presumed that they could get in with a bulk tipper, i.e. an Arctic unit. So once, I'm sure I sent the email thread round.
You did, and you said you were going to come back, you were going to ask them if they could get away, get wheeler down.
They can get in it, well yeah, you can get an 8-wheeler down,
Yeah.
as we know.
Yeah.
And they said it would be an additional £150.
Oh, I guessed 100.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it by 100.
So it would be 2,800 plus that.
I should
So
have been.
presumably we're going to dump this on the concrete hard standing and then barrow it in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whoopie-doo.
Just be careful when they deliver that we've got a dry period. You don't know I can go down into the field.
Well, this was the problem we had last time, and we had to wait.
If I repair it, recovery vehicle comes along.
Well, we know somebody with a recovery vehicle.
But whether you can get an 8-wheeler out.
That's a different one.
Challenge accepted. Yeah, but I mean, we had the same problem last time. I remember we had several cancelled attempts last time, and we waited for the weather to be the right
Ground to dry off.
ground to harden a bit. So
Which it did.
yeah,
And presumably this won't go on footpath, so we're still all access.
yeah.
Well, last time it was dropped in the area between the gate
It goes on to the.
and the...
No, I mean in the children's
Yeah,
play
yeah,
area, it doesn't go on the
No,
footpath.
it doesn't. We barrow it in and
It
just
goes
go
on
on
the-
40 cubic metres sounds an awful lot, but once we start spreading it, disappears. It'll be under the swings, under the basket swing.
We might need to put more tarp down because I think it is a bigger load than we had last time. So, and that took up most of that
It's
space.
almost twice.
I think if we can, yeah,
Yeah, it was 25.
it was 25 last time. So I think if we could put more tarps down to just stop it going on the grass, make it a bit easier. If we could.
Right.
But the
I
thing
think
is,
by a roll of DPC.
you have to be careful when you deliver for the sake of when's the fair again?
The 9th of July, so it'd either have to be like now or we'd have to wait till afterwards, really. So the increased cost of 2,800. Is everybody happy for us to go?
And 50.
No, 2,800.
2,800.
So
I-
another £50.
No, it was 2,600 was the quote, and I guess an extra £100 for the different lorry. But that was
I would,
£50 out.
Have we had this in writing?
Yes.
sorry. The only thing I would say is obviously the price of fuel is going up every day, so when it actually gets delivered, it could be a few pence here or there.
Yeah.
So I would suggest you say
Up to 3,000.
try and get it better. Well, if we leave it until September, it could be too early for diesel.
But you don't believe in September, because often it doesn't wet weather in September.
No, we won't be able to, we'll be doing it as soon as possible, so
August.
if we went up to 3,000,
Well, I mean, obviously we'll try and get it as cheap as we can.
exactly.
The people, the company seem very willing to help in any way, so they're a really good contact actually.
Yeah, no,
When the base,
We'll have to clear the scrub land from around the concrete slab
I'll do that.
of it.
where's Walton, where the base?
There's an email with an address on.
Do you know, Adam?
I think it's,
yeah, I believe it's down County Durham.
yeah, I'm sure it's Stanley.
But we have tried, we've had a few different quotes in, but a lot of them are coming from much further afield, which was then pushing the cost up because of the transport.
Ashwilling,
Oh,
Durham.
Where does this fall in the thresholds of quote?
It would be over, but we have had, this is what I'm saying, we've had quotes from other companies, but then when you talked about delivery, the deliveries are coming massive.
Yeah, I think it was around about 2.5 grand, like we were looking
And that was
at.
for smaller amounts.
Also 25 June.
Yeah, so this feels comfortable.
To approve the purchase. All those in favour?
It'd just be good to get it done because
Oh, yes.
it's been waiting a while.
Authorise the clerk to instruct Oliver Lambert and Sons to carry out any necessary repairs to the electricity boxes on the web.
So this,
This is the usual pre-fair safety and
Yeah.
functioning checks.
Oliver and Margaret are electric.
yeah, they are, so they are the people that put the original boxes in, and then in the interim period we've had a member of the community has done, and the fair committee has done the checks, but obviously he's not able to at the moment, and so we thought we'd go back to the original company just so they're familiar with the boxes.
There was a question about access to the boxes.
We've sorted that.
Right.
Couldn't get in.
Bit persuasion, was it?
I just think it was me. I didn't want to turn it too hard because I just had this vision of snapping the keys in the lock and then not being able to get in at all. But it's a leverage job, isn't it? It was just sitting down on top of the box. Is that right? I should have lifted the door slightly. I mean, we did try. You managed to get in straight away.
Well, probably the main thing was Steve gave it a good squirt WD-40.
Well, Marion and I have been down several times with the WD-40 as well, so it got a good coating.
And it'd been well easy.
Yeah. So that's resolved.
I
So
thought you said that we should need them before it was a job.
we did on the hinges.
It is a chub lock, yes.
I did the hinges and everything.
It shouldn't corrode. Old grease can dry out.
Oh, yes.
Parish representation at meetings. Nothing. Standing item from Northumbria Police.
Nothing.
Leamington Lane bus shelter. Latest info.
Yeah, sorry, change to the agenda. They did come back to me after our last meeting to say they did want to take it on, and then they have had some pushback from their parishioners and they've changed their mind and they no longer wish to take it on, and they would not stand in the way should we want to demolish it.
Comments? It is crumbling.
Do we have to demolish or can we just allow it to crumble?
Safety.
It's just
Falling walls.
Yeah.
It's right next to the highway.
Put some barriers around.
Easier to shift it.
Costs.
Well, whatever. Put a barrier around it. It's gone.
Well, if you go to Mr. Moon, like, oh, they've got to get
People will not be able to do that, let know what you're not going to do for.
well, it's why should we pay for it? Swan's built it.
It's ours, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's unknown.
I did wonder whether there was any sort of, I don't know what happened, what, is the stone got any sort of value now?
I don't think it's enough.
Yeah, well, it's, if you remember back to a few months ago, we did talk about demolishing it, and I called Peter and asked how much he would get it done for, and he said around about, and obviously things are subject to change nowadays, but around about 300. And he could totally take it away and make, clear the site.
Done and dusted.
It was never there. However, Arriva and the County Council have said that there's been quite a big budget provided to provide rural services again. So I would almost guarantee that once it's knocked down, there'll be a bus going past.
I did wonder about this when I had heard tell of this come through. Yeah.
So there's been a big push for rural communities because you can get north and south very well, but you can't get east to west too well.
No.
And Arriva, I think it was the council said, but it was a big budget that they've just allocated. And then in Swarland are pushing to get a bus through the village. So what happens if we take the bus lane down, the bus stop down, and then we need one? Because then it is our problem. However, the one that's there, is fairly dilapidated. It's full of
all the wood on it is absolutely rotten.
What is going to be worse is if we leave it there, they put a bus stop route through it, somebody goes to use it, gets injured on what's there at the moment rather than standing there with a brolly.
Well, you're quite right.
So if it's not repairable with these, I think we need to remove it, and then if it comes, we'd have to cross that bridge when we got to it. I personally haven't been out and inspected it.
It would definitely be easier to build another one than repair.
Well, you get these prefabricated ones.
The same as the top of
Yeah,
the north end here.
Acton one.
Yes.
Much as I'm very much in favour of repairing things.
It wouldn't be impossible to repair it, but it would be a fiddly job, and I would think be more than 300.
Yeah.
Yes.
All those in favour of, right, we can't,
Do you think we need to make
discuss.
this decision?
we can't make a
now,
decision
we're gonna have
to get rid of it at the moment, because it's
Yeah.
not, getting rid of it is not on the agenda.
Can you put,
Would you like me to get a further price?
yeah, if you just get him to email me, would that be okay?
Yep. Obviously, it's working on the highways, so it's not something that can be done by anyone.
Ramp at Riverside. Given the difficulty in finding anyone to even consider the work, I think we're lucky to get this quote, estimate or tender, or what it is. John, you have the original paperwork I handed over.
Yes, I do have it,
That might include some specification for the timber as originally used.
Yes, it did have. Yeah, there was
Which would be useful for putting forward a specification of work to whoever we have to clear for the SSI work.
If you give it back to me, because I can scan it through to them, just say it's going to be the same design, so we've got a copy, then they'll have a picture of the design, and I can send that together with the quote and just see what they need from us.
Presumably any treatment of the wood as well
Yes.
will need to comply with SSI.
Yeah.
So
So
hopefully
need to
that's
specify.
on this original specification.
And just to say, I mean, obviously, when we take when I met Mr. Bowden there, he did have a look, as much underneath as we could. Once we take the treads off, he'll be able to examine the uprights from the inside and the bearings from the inside. So it might be that we kind of uncover additional work. We were hopeful that not, because it does look sound. The uprights do look sound, but we don't know what we're going to find.
From my experience, all the longitudinal bearers will need changing. Probably some of the cross beams.
I think he was anticipating that. So do you want?
Have it all in writing.
Yeah.
We proceed. Ask him to proceed.
Do we have any guarantee with that quote? Because it didn't seem to say that there was any guarantee for work that we weren't on the original one.
I've not seen the paperwork.
It was just that. It was like a handwritten on that email, like a scan photo that emailed around.
Ah, yes, that. No reason why we shouldn't should ask for a guarantee.
Can I just make the suggestion, we've already discussed it, there may be additional works. You should approve a higher budget now, rather than come to a stop and then have to wait another month before we proceed any further.
Yes, point taken. Somebody suggest top limit?
Aye.
We'll have to get on to Councillor Felton as well, because he said he'd make a contribution towards it.
Aha, of course.
Yes.
And could we get something out of the community fund? Council community fund?
I have no idea.
I can ask, because he's quite helpful on ringing the funding man officers.
I mean, Councillor Felton was offering to give you something out of his small works allowance,
Yeah.
Yes.
but there's the community fund in the county as well.
You
It's just five
can
pounds.
ask.
You don't get it unless you ask.
No.
Can that not delay getting this sorted up as well?
No.
Because they usually turn things on pretty quickly at county.
I'll ask. I'm just some of those things in our record.
That's good, yeah.
Could we not agree a budget now and accept payments later?
Yes.
So I will.
Well, I'm not objecting to it, but we've already agreed on what I've suggested is 5.
Yes. All those in favour of a budget of 5,000?
Upper limit of 5, yes. But these other bits can go on as well.
Well, I will also speak in the meantime. I'll ask Mr. Bowden about a guarantee for the work and let you know what he says, and then I'll also get on and speak to the. I think that we have to speak to the Environment Agency about the floods, about whether there's a flooding licence required. That's what Natural England told me last time. So I think it's just a case of running it past them so that they can flag up if there's any issues with what we're proposing. There shouldn't be, because I understand that there isn't going to be any. Like, they're more concerned if we would take the machinery, for example, on, which I don't think will be the case, but that's what they wanted to know. So it should just be a rubber stamping exercise.
Yeah. Replacing light with light. Any final comments? Red phone box. Poor crumbling creature.
I've had an email thread with the people who I asked last year, and I got sent back sort of semi-revised quote. There was quite a frustrating point where they've put a ridiculous fee in for collecting and returning it. So, you know, 1 second.
And that's because they would rather take it away and do it on their workshop, is that?
No, they want to charge extra for the removal from site and to replant it. So the £2,995 plus the VAT was on the basis that it was delivered to them. So they've said that they do offer a pickup and delivery service, but they would expect somewhere in the region of £760 to pick it up, which and £860 to recycle, which I think personally is
I'm in a good business.
well, it's ridiculous.
Well, let me throw something completely wild out. Looking into buying a new one. You know, a better quality one.
Well,
That is a listed.
it's listed. So what? So is the object listed, or is the fact that it has to be a full box there?
You
Do
know,
we need that servant?
Gemma
Is
does.
it happening until next year?
Why are you cursing us like this?
but no, I mean, as far as I know, it's all red phone boxes haven't been listed.
It is, I think it would be that phone box is listed.
Just talking about the charges you're saying there, I'm very familiar with charges for trucking and trucks with high-ups. That's not reasonable.
No. Well,
And you get charged one rate and
well, I find it.
the other way as well.
Yeah. To be honest, I find it quite an expensive quote, knowing that if it could be liberated from the ground, it could be couriered to the factory, but then it's using their expertise to put it back on without damaging it. Now,
The thing is, it's using somebody's expertise to get it lifted as well.
Yeah,
without damaging it.
Yes, that's the.
Well, the thing is, the way that it's lifted, they take the top glass panes out, put the strap through it, and rip it out of the ground.
Very trouble.
That falls apart, surely.
Yes.
Has the,
Hang on, can you let John finish?
So, while I do still think they are the best company to do the restoration, and certainly the cheapest, because the next company was around about 5,500 for the same sort of job. They did say that we would have to make sure that it didn't have an electric connection. There wasn't still a phone in it, which obviously we know there isn't. They said, note, you will have to make sure BT's disconnect power and telephones, make sure the black base of the phone box is free from any concrete. And if it is concreted down, you'd have to excavate 10 centimetres underneath to make sure the high amp can lift it. So I think it may.
So they want you to remove it, put it back down, and then let them lift it.
Yeah. Now the other thing is the workshop is in Lincoln, and so obviously this trucking cost is motorway miles. And what I would suggest is, should we not look for a lifting company nearer, and then put it on a trailer or a van and send it to them?
the issue with it being a listed structure is that if we balls it up, we could be fined for it.
Yeah,
and
but what is the listing? Is the listing that there has to be a red K6 kiosk on the bridge, or does it have to be that one?
do we need to speak to the planning officer about it?
Well, because speaking from my experience, and not that I have any experience with full boxes at all, but when vehicles go in for full restorations, the chassis number is sometimes the only thing that gets kept.
Yeah.
So could you take the back panel off of this one, drag it onto to a new K6, and it still do the same?
Then it's
full
not
box?
our
Well, but to be fair, the restoration process involves a new set of windows, a new set of doors, a new set of crowns, and a new base, or repairs.
What was the last one? Lid?
Yeah, the lid and the base.
The top.
So it's almost. The restoration process is quite expensive.
So it's only the back of the frame.
So are we going to
Is that
pay?
what you said as well?
So are we paying a ridiculous amount of money for them to strip it down and basically build a new one and then bring it all the way back? Or do we just buy a new one?
When we say buy a new one, is it like
Buy a fully
you
restored
can
one?
buy a
fully restored,
refurbed one, just plonk it there, because if it's like for like, and we can get one that's been already.
The only thing I will say is there is a unique number on the box.
I'm not sure that matters, does it? Should we do? Surely.
I'm not making
It's
that
the look.
decision.
Yeah, I agree.
But we can find out from the planning or something.
Surely something. County can give us a
Any
discreet
knowledge from
answer.
the audience?
I would just say, the conservation officer.
I mean,
Yeah, well, that's been.
They'll have a listed buildings
Yeah, it's
person
Yeah,
that's
I can-
planning.
I could do it. I could potentially do
You
all
know them,
that.
don't you, Jim?
Whether or not
It-
that's replies.
Perhaps you would draw perfect. You should be able to give you the answers.
Yeah.
Just in terms of listings, there was a programme once where if something is so badly
that's
damaged
right,
and so costly to repair, they can delist it.
yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah, I think-
this particular company will sell a fully restored, albeit empty inside, fully restored kiosk for the same price as a restoration job. So
Really?
it may be worth having a look and seeing, because as we know, the bottom of the phone box is in a horrendous state of repair. And later on in this email, it said that for the please find a methodology which will give you an understanding of the logistics cost involved. We're working on 4 phone boxes for parish councils at the moment. The phone box will be stripped down and shot blasted back to the bare metal and then built back up again. This will attract a charge of £2,450, providing the cast iron is intact.
I think it's the cost of the
So
unknown,
there is
isn't
a-
it?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
fine.
caveat that actually
Involved.
yeah, and then he sent me a picture of a rusty one and a damaged one that had been the black, the black edging around the bottom, that the casting had been damaged. And he said 75 years old, virtually impossible to weld, so we can do an invisible repair using mild steel. And to give you an idea of cost associated with adding a missing cast iron, please find an example of what we did for a client, see pictures below. We fixed it as per method above, and the total cost of the client was an extra £125. But it may be, in this case, £125 per panel. And the back is definitely, I think probably the worst, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Councillor Cuthbert's correct in terms of the removal of it and it being damaged, because it is extremely well wedged within a really nicely tarmac surface.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely worthwhile speaking to the conservation the officer, because it is in such bad condition that if it is lifted, it has the potential to break.
Yeah.
But if we do it all within a process with their help, then it may be that we just get a new one instead.
Yes.
Because I think Gary's right that
Well, if
it does, you can.
Well, if that's possible, where it can be delisted and then potentially relisted with a new one, I think that would be better.
Yeah.
Because if it's going to be a £3,000-ish for a restoration, but then it's going to be £125 per rusty bit, and then a new oak door, and a new oak door, and such like that. We're talking £5,000–6,000 again. In which case, the most cost-effective way is to get a new one.
Yeah, 925 for the back, so
But I say still a new one that's fully restored and still of the same era. It's not brand new off the production line by any stretch. But
it will also mean a quick turnaround.
yeah,
Well,
because I can see if we take it away, there's a delay for it coming back. Somebody will have something to say about it.
well, he said that start to finish would be 10 weeks.
Yeah. So.
However, if we bought one,
It'd be
potentially,
instant.
well, you could save on, if they got them to install it as well, they may be able to do a one-off fee with the drive up, take their one away and plant the new one.
Yes, in one journey.
They'll want to take the old one away anyway.
Oh, they will, if they're going to refurb it. And then,
But
yeah.
in fairness, ours doesn't look as bad as some of the ones that have been sending me pictures of.
It's the firm who you think will do a good repair job, who also offer complete newly restored
That's right.
finished jobs. And will they pay to take the old one away? Because they'll
Well,
refurbish that and sell it.
Well, because I didn't actually ask the question about a new one, but I would suggest that the old one would be surcharged. I think, well, actually, no, I don't think so, because you can buy a new one from them without having an old one put in. So potentially they might
Offset
Might
Well,
show
that's
them
all
all about
costs.
They might do a swap and knock off the
Right.
transport
So
costs.
we need to find out if that would be acceptable with the conservation officer
Yeah,
and then inquire if it's possible with the company.
but we're saying if it is acceptable, then we prefer to go for the new one rather than the risk of
you're guaranteeing. I have this conversation.
recommended
I have
repairs.
this conversation with customers every day, and you're guaranteeing the repair is done right by renewing. And while it's a shame to have the old one taken away and not be able to be fixed, everything can be fixed for a price. We'll have to look to spend money correctly, and you could be just wasting time and wasting money.
And whereas it is a classic car equivalent phone box, we are getting another classic car.
Does, for instance, the new one come with any sort of guarantee on their workmanship on it as well? Maybe a question worth asking them.
So they're very proud of their workmanship.
Yeah,
And,
no.
and like I said, the guy's got even the British standard number for the paint and all brass bolts and all washers and things in his mind. While you can never tell on photographs, the quality of the work that they do is incredible, and they offer different infills, so they can, for instance, other councils have used them as libraries, some use them as changing booths, some use them as defibrillators, and there's all sorts of different backboard things you can buy. And,
We would want a guarantee on corrosion.
right.
Right, so, as Gemma summed up just now, it looks as though we've got the two routes: repair,
Or replace.
I can say repair at an unknown cost, or replace at a fairly specific cost. if we look into confirming the prices of both, then next time we'll know which way we want to jump.
Well, they said that they couldn't give a cast iron price without stripping it back.
Yeah.
So,
But they could give us, we can certainly get a price for the replacement.
But first step would be speaking to the conservation officer.
I'll
see
do that.
if it's worth
Yeah.
our own list, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Abby, you try to find a name, but I can't.
Local transport plan. This is the Oval and South Lane working groups. John, Chris and Adam. Have you had any feedback from Highlands?
no, since we,
We did get, so I was a bit disappointed to see on page 14 of the agenda at the top, I have set out the entirety of the submission feedback that we got from NCC. That's not my summarisation, that's theirs. They have summarised it in very brief terms, what we had requested on the left-hand side, and then their comments are on the right. And I was quite disappointed because I felt that the working groups had done lots of work, and that certainly the site meetings with the the contacts that you've had with NCC don't seem to be reflected in their feedback, which is saying we basically can't create additional parking for residents, that Southview and South Lane are only getting a feasibility survey, and then it looks like again they're going to turn around and say, well, we can't fund it, so it would be for residents to fund. It just felt like I didn't feel that it was very fair feedback.
We've been part of the group, if that's okay, John, may I just go through some of the correspondence? So, yeah, the Oval, it's saying LTP funding cannot be used to create additional parking for residents. So within the request that we did for the LTP, it was not for additional parking at all. It was because of overruns and crossovers of the site. And not only that, we actually had an email from the head of the NCC department saying, you should have funded this from the LTP. I do not make the decisions on LTP priorities. So he's, I was in a group conversation and he was telling the other person, this is what we should have been doing, the LTP. So that is from the NCC saying that is what we should do, and that is what we did do.
Yeah.
So for them to say, we cannot do it.
And as well to basically summarise it as a parking issue, and it isn't. What I said to you this morning, wasn't it? It's not a parking issue.
It's just not listed.
No.
They're not looking at the documents, and it's exactly the same for the parking issues and road services in Southview and South Lane. They have done the feasibility study.
Yeah.
They were there in December doing the feasibility study.
you said we'll have
A plan by
January.
correct, yes. So that would have potentially come out of last year's LTP fund. So it means that in this year's LTP fund, there's nothing listed. So again, that's something for a conversation with Trevor Thorne, to get that LTP request looked at again in terms of the survey. And the other one regarding the speeding.
It wasn't speeding again, it was about the crossings.
It was about exactly
lay-by and everything, I know.
exactly that. And I mean, obviously the speeding element you did on the LTP, so I'm not quite sure whether that actually contained the speed survey that was done. So they're asking again for another speed survey. And within conversations that the lay-by working group had with NCC and Trevor Thorne, we did a complete walkthrough from the lay-by right down to the bridge, because although the lay-by group, by name, you think of the lay-by, obviously the idea was to, it's a whole process, so everything knocks on to everything else in terms of parking and traffic. So doing a crossing, which that impacts on for further down the line in terms of whether you put sort of barriers in or whether you put a zebra crossing in, it all impacts on one another. So Trevor Thorne and NCC were quite keen to do a survey. And the mantra was that it doesn't have, we're not expecting it all to be done at once because we know it's expensive, but the idea was to have a planned process so that we do this, but we'll then do that, and then we'll do the next thing over a period of time because NCC have no money and we have to contribute. So everything seemed to be going down that line very positively. But again, looking at the Riverside, that took 6-7 years to get that done. So you have to bear in mind that that is the sort of timescales that we're looking at for anything to be done.
So it would seem we need to kick Trevor Thorne into action to find out why they've taken such a casual response to it.
Specifically,
also at the same time, I would say, did we have a response from contacting Anne-Marie Trevelyan about the
crossing?
About the crossing?
No, just her usual. It has been received, sort of.
If she gets any request, she just refers it to Councillor Felton, which has happened in the past.
She seemed to take a personal interest in it.
I know, because she was at the school, but
it doesn't.
It doesn't
go to her. It's all.
Yes.
It's all managed by her. His office is the right word. It's all managed by her officers.
Yeah, but she only has to give the nod though.
But it's still got to come out of Cameron's budget. So, so I had contacted. The school had a visit from Anne-Marie, and she met with the school council. One of the issues that they had raised was road safety and the need for a crossing of some sort. So I had been regularly emailing for some time. So this was like a couple of years. I mean, this was pre-COVID. We'd originally asked about crossings. We got told that we would need to do a traffic survey, and it's to do with the ratio of cars to vehicles to pedestrians, and it has to hit a certain. There's a formula. It has to produce a certain number in order to even be considered. Then it has to go on a request for an LTP, etc. But I have been asking for this traffic survey for a while, and I keep asking about it because originally I was told it can't be done, COVID, roads aren't being used, fine. So then I chased it up, I've chased it up a couple of times, so I thought, I'll just chase it up again, because you'd mentioned to me about Anne-Marie's visit and everything. So I chased it up again and copied Anne-Marie in, to put it on her radar as well, that we'd already been asking for it. I've sent the responses to the school for their information, but we just got told that it's still, the traffic survey is planned, but on a waiting list. So, yeah.
There was a traffic survey done recently, yeah. We had the tubes, in my past experience. Well, no, the tubes, it was, in my past work experience, I worked for a company that did traffic surveys. It's basically 2 rubber tubes go across the road, bolted into a box that records the speed and the number of vehicles.
But I think this was supposed to be a
directions. It was county council put it in.
But I think this was supposed to be this should be a counted survey because it has to count the number of pedestrians because there's a ratio, it's like a formula to work out a ratio. And they said that they would do it at school drop-off and pick-up times because that would be the important times to do it. Because that's when the problem is. We're looking to do it, sort of down this way a bit further.
Well, there was tips which they not that long ago.
That's what I mean. So they should have some sort of traffic. Yeah, across the road. They should have some sort of traffic speed and the number of vehicles. So it'll also tell you the direction the vehicle was going.
I think was that.
They did publish a report.
Yeah, I think was that in March, the end of March last year.
I think within the last 12 months or no.
No, there was one done earlier this year, and there was a one in Thurston as well.
Yeah, that was the one with the radars. They tell me the speed of the vehicles as well, which in my opinion was going the wrong direction. Most of the vehicles are speeding out of the village rather than into the village in my experience.
Well, the majority of people in the main street think the residents of Fairway are the people who speed down the village vehicles. Sorry. Not just general shop.
So basically, sorry, I'm just saying to
It's still up about in speeding.
They've brought the submission date sooner. Normally it's September. They've brought it earlier so that they can spend more time thinking about the proposals. So it's now July, we've got time to I put it on this agenda and it will also go on the July one, so that it was just to raise it, so we can like sort of between now and the July meeting, have a think about what we need to do and agree the submissions at the next meeting. But I just feel like it's very, I just don't know whether, you know, I think as Fiona's pointed out, we do need to persist probably with what we've already put in. Try and speak to them about why they've drawn the conclusions they have, as you suggested, Lindsay. You know, in what way wasn't it clear what we were asking for, because they seem to have misinterpreted it?
It's in the old story, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And this happens in county council. Of course, the trouble is, there's maybe been staff have changed.
Maybe.
And there's
Yeah,
no
they
continuity.
they are taught to read
Oh,
and do basic
no,
maths
no,
before
no,
they
no,
get
no.
a job with the council.
The frustrating thing about it is when we had the walk around in December,
Yeah.
we were explicit with what we're after. We had a look at the lay-by, a look at the Oval, a look at South Lane, and to be honest, it was quite irritating that the guy just kept talking about things that couldn't happen. And he said, you know, he was going to get back to us for the report, he was going to make a decision, an informed decision about what could be done with South Lane, what could be done with South View. And what kind of that?
Do we have a name?
I'll have it written down.
Well, let's Peter Thompson.
Rings a bell.
Christopher Thompson. Was it Christopher or Peter?
Well,
Well, if you can dig that out, we can maybe put our heads together, John, and get something.
Well, I know there's definitely Chris Thompson accountable, who is to do with highways.
You can dig that out. We can.
John, should we get the working group and ourselves together? And so that's Chris and Adam.
Can you try and get Trevor involved? I know it's up in the job, but you know he should be the person who's advocating for us with the county council.
That's what he's there for.
That's his job.
Definitely.
Okay, so we'll get that, but sooner rather than later, John, because otherwise we'll have time for July.
Felton and Thurston Fair. We've, for various subjects, we've talked about consultations with the public and possibly taking a booth at the fair and manning it for consultations. Are we going to do this? It will need bodies and we need to know how we're going to do it.
I really want to do it.
Yep.
However, Richard's already committed for pretty much the whole fair, and I'll have 2 small children, so I'm not going to be able to
I can give a fair amount of time.
stint.
I can do a few hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why.
I'm in the same position as Gemma, that Nick tends to be on the barbecue all day.
Yeah, work's busy. Although we've managed to get out of dog shows.
Yes, oh, Richard has. I was going to say, so Nick's not trying to judge the dogs. So,
We will need to put some heads together to decide exactly what it is we want to ask and how we record answers, make something meaningful from it. So we've got play park stuff,
Yeah. Okay.
Mugger,
Generally, I want to put some kind of visual together that kind of summarises the recreation and play area regeneration evolving idea, and either have a token in the box thing, comments box, or simple vote type thing, but I need to kind of make it visual. I may need some help with that, unless you want that massive board bringing out.
do a bit of Felton, do a bit of craft at the...
Do some crafting, yeah.
Richard and Anne and Gemma, is there anything that the biodiversity group want to put forward, or at least can use it as an opportunity to kind of communicate with people? Cause I know
Yeah, a
Yeah, I
canvas
think
or
some sort of simple, presentation of what it's about. And
Yeah.
just invite
it's a nice
people to
opportunity to make sure it clear
come
to
up with
people.
ideas and questions and so on. Do we want? I mean, I think the things that are visible will attract attention.
Yeah,
People ask
yeah.
about. So maybe a telephone box, depending on where we've got to. Just say, we know what it's like. We're planning to renovate it. That's where some of your money's going to be going. So, Gemma, are you happy to lead this? And
Yeah.
we've got some names, we will try and liaise with you to make it work.
Yeah,
I'll help.
but we could-
We'll
we
put
can-
something. I
yeah.
can help you put something together because that's
Yes.
something we can work on.
Yeah.
When,
And then we'll just need to come up with some form of rota plan close to the time.
I'm sorry, I'm going to craft you all
I was going to say, if I can drive, you know, I can probably find in charge of part of it and do
Yeah.
part of the day. It's just the whole day's a bit much.
Oh, really? I'm there.
So I mean, you skipped over giving them permission. I know it's this one.
Sorry?
You skipped over.
Ah,
You've not re-elected anything else.
I should probably disclose it.
it should be in the contract.
I heard you.
Record, the Parish Council needs to formally give permission for fair traffic to use Recreation Lane. Or to be more pedantic, to authorise it. Any problems?
We clear the access and stuff. Is it a parking, isn't it?
That's another issue.
But the acts would normally.
In the first instance, are we happy for traffic to use Recreation Lane to go down to the rec?
It's usually the people setting up and then the sort of the judges drive down the park at the end and Marion uses a little cart, doesn't she?
All those in favour, we're happy with that.
I'll abstain.
And I presume parking, are we allowing parking in the old pony field?
Well, as long as there's nobody got any objections, then I haven't got a problem with it, but.
That's between you and
Well, but they'll be doing it at their own risk if they take out a walker as somebody's pulling out and having nothing to do with that.
Good, really.
Sorry?
They do so at their own risk.
they usually marshal it, they usually have people in highways with walkies.
Well, as long as if there is somebody gets run over, that's not my problem.
Definitely
Are we encouraging general public parking?
No,
not.
This is for
it's setting up usually, they have to,
Yeah.
they usually have to have their vehicles off by a certain time.
There's nobody parking there. There's normally about 100 cars in the field.
No, but it's not.
The theory is.
But there has been every year that I know. There's people come to Felton and park in that field every year that I've been here.
Well, they should.
I thought that was mostly stallholders and judges.
But yes, it should make
The
more.
last
There's
fair,
meant to be a sign up saying stallholders.
the last fair,
No.
there was about 60 cars in the field,
Yeah.
which is 3 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So do we make it clear that it can't, you know, it's not for our permission, the permission that we're giving is not for fair attendees, it's for
No.
Stallholders.
stallholders.
But you see, when you talk about fair traffic, you talk about footfallers as well.
In this instance, we're talking about cars.
But you see, you don't specify cars in what you've said.
I know I said that I declared an interest, but can I also say without access along for the marquee, we haven't got a fair.
Precisely.
Well, we have agreed.
So for the fair committee and associated persons.
This is becoming a shambles on my watch. But never mind, we'll get there. So are we quite happy for stallholders and the like,
Fair committee.
and fair committee to use the lane and the field, pony field? All those in favour? Back on course, correspondence received. seen this. Are we all happy with it as stands?
Can I talk about the response that I sent?
Certainly.
Member of the public asked about advertising for the annual parish meeting. I've pledged to make sure it gets on to social media, but if anybody else has any good ideas of how we can raise the profile of the meeting, I think it would be worth a quick discussion if we can. I did say in response to the question that I would make sure I put it on social media, and then obviously there was an email thread going back and forth regarding maybe a one-way transmission for the Parish Council on social media somehow. And I don't just want to leave it. I don't just want to leave that email thread. I think it would be a good idea if we can have just a 5-minute conversation about what we can do to be more, for public announcements and stuff using social media. Because most people do use it nowadays.
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss it. I think it might be a good idea for us to have our own Facebook
It's saying it's not an agenda item, Chair.
Yeah, I'll just ask if you can talk.
but rather than it just be me, you and somebody else posting.
Right, okay, it's not on the agenda, but I've just asked if I can talk about the correspondence which I've had with a member of the board.
You're leading on further things there.
This is why the Parish Council gets nothing done. Can we have a 5-minute conversation about a correspondence which I've had, which you've all seen, with a member of the public?
Which is on the agenda.
We can discuss, but we can't make decisions.
I'm not asking for a resolution.
It's on the agenda.
No, I know, but we can discuss.
I'm
I'm accepting your principle.
A member of the public has made expressed an opinion that we need to be more open and transparent, and I totally agree. I think a good way of doing it is to have a social media presence. Now, whether that be, as we discussed previously, one of us going on our own personal Facebook and saying, acting as a councillor, or whether we have our own Parish Council news to get onto Felton Thurston Matters, for instance, or to get on generally on Facebook as a whole, I do think it's a good idea.
I agree.
Yeah, we can, as it was said, it can be a one-way transmission. You can refuse comments back if you wanted to use it just to say that there is a meeting, or there is a coffee morning, or there is an idea, or you could use it as an open group discussion.
I will admit to being somewhat ignorant of exactly how these work. I hear so many tales that these sites effectively become slanging matches.
That's where you close the comments off, so we can do it as I said, a one-way thing.
Just
Yeah.
a pump
So
simple.
it's literally an announcement. We could have a Facebook page which we could put on Felton Thurston Matters, or other people could like it and follow it, and it would just have announcements on it, and you wouldn't be able to comment. Or if we wanted something we wanted people to comment on, we can open the comments up on that, and then if it starts to go spiral downhill, you can close the comments off. So we would have full control of that, and we would be able to do that, and it wouldn't just be open up to. But the issue is that we would need to be quite careful with it to prevent that from happening, and it would need manning and being well controlled. And for somebody who, literally when I go to work, I can't check my phone, I can't check my emails, I'm sterile up to my armpits. It's not something that I'm going to be able to, man 24/7. And that's where my worry comes into it, and why I'm often reluctant to actually put things on when I'm going to open up to comments. But I think we could have it so that it was closed to comments and work it quite well. We just need to make sure that that isn't our only way of having transparency in things.
I think you could have it as a virtual notice in the window.
Yeah.
Yes, I like the idea of more publicity. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
There will be an element of, if we allow comments, there will be an element of people in the village who will only comment to cause an argument. And I think if we say that when we're asking for an opinion, comments are allowed, and until we're asking for an opinion, i.e. when we're not just saying this is happening,
You can also
then you just say
set it so so that comments need to be approved
Yeah,
before they're posted, so that you don't have spam or.
Well, because you don't want people saying, I'm not going because he's going.
Yeah.
Or, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, the moderation on Felton and Thurston really matters seems to work.
But it's not
Now.
controlled. But it's not controlled by any of us, though. That's
No, not by us.
Yeah.
No, but
So
I
we
mean,
need to control
you can
our
have a
own,
moderator
and
who
then-
does control it.
The other thing is with the Facebook page, you can have events, so if we wanted to advertise meetings like the
Yeah.
public
Well,
meetings,
that's the whole
they
idea.
flash out to
Yeah.
anybody that follows and
Yeah.
you get the notification, it's really good
Planning
like that.
dates of the future parish council meetings, annual meetings, you can even put in it, there would be ways of, for instance with the mugger pitch, putting that as a, if we put in our options, they can then vote for it, saying, right, this is the preferred option.
like a social opinion poll.
So what we've got, we know what we want. Item for the next agenda,
Social media page.
social media
Yeah.
page and setting it up.
So, yeah, brilliant. So with regards to other methods of transparency and advertising and things, obviously we've got the notice boards around the village. I do think that we should put up the dates or significant dates in massive writing so that people can see them from a mile away. I don't think people should have to read the whole scheme of everything to, be able to pick those bits up, but they should just say next parish meeting open to public this date at this time in this place.
Every now and again, the notice board is full
Yeah.
of the necessary agendas and minutes.
That is
There
true.
is no room for,
Yes, that is very true.
for
But
placard
if
time.
we've got that opportunity, I think, you know, it just so that people see it, because people just don't read it. And we can say, oh yeah, we're making it in, put in a public space and everything, if it's available for them there, and it's on the parish council website, but at the end of the day, they actually have to go and really look, rather than having it waved in front of their face.
Cheers there.
Do we have
The other thing is there's a notice board at the bottom and the top that we often don't put anything in. So I think the parish meeting, admittedly I messed up with the attachments, so I'm quite happy to print off what I've put to go in the bridge, make it bigger and put it on both notice boards as well as, I'll do some on lampposts if that's acceptable, not a form of littering.
So long as it's taken down as soon as it's out of date.
I take other people's down when they're out of date.
Yes. Any further matters on existing correspondence list?
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask about, in terms of the correspondence, it was going to be reviewed at the end of May about receiving correspondence from members of the public. So potentially that might be an item for the agenda, but I'm also aware that obviously the councillors mentioned that their emails haven't been listed on the correspondence. I'm also aware that the emails from the internal auditor, they were not published on the received correspondence list either. So obviously there's items which aren't being listed. So whether or not councillors are aware of these items is unclear. So I just think there needs to be a bit more openness and transparency, that things that the clerk has received, but it's not being made public to other members of the parish council.
We would endeavour, I'm sure the clerk will produce a full list of correspondence.
We did at the time say that there would still be a filter of spam taken out. So like invitations to online meetings and stuff like this would be missed.
I think that's quite a good idea, but I don't think the auditor's correspondence is spam, and that is something that all of the councillors should have been aware of.
I suggest it is.
I don't think what this confirmation is public knowledge.
It's not.
Councillors' knowledge, but it's not public knowledge.
Sorry, I mean, the email that I'm referring to when I said that he'd asked for further things, that has arrived since the agenda, and because it's because I've already reported on it underneath internal auditors, I haven't included it.
No, I was thinking.
Listed as correspondence.
I was thinking more in terms of the internal auditor. I think at the last meeting you said that the council were waiting for the internal auditor, whereas actually saw the internal auditor soon after that, and he was actually had sent an email to the council requesting a date for the audit to take place. So it was actually the other way round. He was waiting for a response from the council. And I was under the impression that all emails from the internal and external auditors would go directly to the councillors.
It's actually a requirement of JPAG.
And I've been assured that that was happening, but it obviously has not.
Your comments are noted.
Thank you.
Planning, to receive list of ongoing matters as item 19.
Sorry, I should have declared an interest, obviously, because mine's still there, but...
It's moving very slowly. They've permitted, so since the last time, the first application has been permitted, but everything else is still awaiting decisions.
Why is things going so slow? Because they're supposed to have time when they make decisions.
Well, our time got put back.
I knew yours did too.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was supposed to be 12 weeks, isn't it?
Well, you got yours, didn't you?
22 weeks after, yeah.
Ongoing matters, we have somewhere. We've all had this. In general, I have so taken as read. No need to go through it item by item. We have, middle of the first page, 2028 litter and dog waste bins, property management committee to consider what further action required.
I think that's actually possibly, it's partly been resolved because it was originally, when the running fox only had its single bin there, and there was an ongoing problem with it overflowing, and they've now got their wheelie bin and single bin. And at the time, we had suggested whether the running fox should get a double bin and the single bin from the running fox should move to the lay-by. So now I think we just need to decide if one is needed at the lay-by.
So it's two separate issues there.
Yeah, yes, but they were originally one because they were sort of connected.
Outside hill rise, to consider what further action was required. Was that property management group assigned?
But there was again, I think that one is resolved. Is it still in?
I think the same issue there is what was happening at the running fox.
Yes.
Trade base.
Trade base.
And that was the problem that we got 20 years ago.
Technically not trade waste.
Yes.
Out of hill rise stores themselves.
They were putting packaging, which they should have put in their rubbish bins.
Yeah.
Wasting.
They used to have a commercial bin outside.
No, they haven't.
It's been removed.
I've not seen.
Is it gone?
I've not seen a commercial.
The dumping bin.
We used to have a main
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's gone. It's not there now. But they do take their commercial waste home in bin bags or take it to the tip or whatever.
But I think
The survey was done a few years ago, but on both shops, the Rise and the Ring Fox, and that was the problem from both shops.
Yeah, but hang on, I mean, a survey of several years ago.
And that's several years ago, 20 years ago, yes. When we were looking at this whole issue there.
I think it was before me.
No, it wasn't, no, you would have been you were looking at revising the bins, we talked to them, you mentioned to do a bin.
I did, but I think this might have been going on for a long time because I think that, but anyway, I think outside the shop, and it's just a really well used bin at the moment. Like, you know, a lot of people come out of the shop, unwrap whatever, you know, there's a lot of people buying lunches, snacks, whatever, and you see, you know, it goes almost straight in the litter bin, doesn't it?
Well, all goes down the street because it's up so far and the bin comes through.
And there's a lot of people do now stop at either the Running Fox or the shop for lunches. You see a lot of trades, trade, people vans stopping, getting their lunch. You see, you know, all the people that have been working on, you know, when they were putting the electric charge points in, when they've had waterworks being, you know, everything, they just sort of tend to wander down by the lunch, don't they? So I think it's just a well-used bin, whether it needs to be a bigger one.
Is it worth us actually discussing it with them?
Is it our bin? Do we own the bin?
We look after the bins.
Yeah, but I think actually discussing it with the shop, see if they think it's an issue and have a comment on it as well.
But you're saying, you know,
Well, I walk past it every night when I take the dogs out,
Right.
and honestly, sometimes,
you can barely get the stuff in the top.
well, not that I'm putting stuff in the top, but I walk past and I'm picking stuff up that's blown through, pushing it down in, and it's really difficult because it is well compacted already.
I would suggest the
And
only
it's coffee
long-term
cups
answer
and things like that.
is a big.
Is it being emptied regularly?
Yes,
I think it's filling up all, I think it's a really well
it
used
does
bin.
fill up quickly though. Because one day you'll go past and it's totally been emptied, and there's very little in it, and then by the next time you come, it's good 3 quarters up, and then the next night it's over the top again.
Well, perhaps we ask for a more frequent collection. And more often. How often is that? You know what I mean? Claire, could you check on that?
I can try it.
I know they come once a week anyway.
Well, they empty the dog bins 2 or 3 times a week.
I don't know. But as I say, I know they come at least a minimum once.
Oh yes, but I'm sure the dog bins and the waste bin at the bus stop is emptied at least twice a week.
I'm sure the one at the top of the Bellevue Estates twice a week as well.
Right.
We are now hitting the 2-hour mark. We've got a few ordinance to finish. I propose we crack on and finish. All those in favour? Thank you.
Just got a public question to do with the ongoing matters. On the second page, item 2021-6, towards the bottom, the employment contracts and job descriptions.
Sorry, can you?
Speak up.
Item 2021-6, the employment contracts / job descriptions item. It's just the dates on there don't seem to be quite correct, as in the date raised was actually on the 5th of October 21 at the Finance Committee meeting.
Yeah, I've only put it down as when it went to the council, but I can note that it was raised prior to that at the Finance Committee.
Whose employment contract we're talking about?
All 3.
Sorry?
All 3.
And the contracts group need to meet.
Yeah.
In the second column, where it's been updated on the 28th of the 3rd, I don't quite understand how can it have been updated if there hasn't been any meetings since December.
I think that's just when I went through the spreadsheet and added it on, because when we put the ongoing matters back on the agenda, I went back through and updated everything, and so it was the last time I've typed stuff in.
Contracts group or finance group?
Contracts, we moved it from finance to contract.
It's not what contract group is originally set up.
No, but it's an employment contract, it is a contract as such, and that's what we discussed.
Right. One I will raise, page 2, 2020, 39, 12 months Parish Council to work towards putting an action plan in
Well,
place.
this was because it was something that came out of my silker that we were supposed to have one, so I did a, not pretend one for my silker, I did a model one for my silker that I had to comment on. Basically, I had to find one and annotate it. And at the time I said, did we want to put one in place? So we could take that forward and use my silker submission as a basis.
So we have a starting point.
Yes, we do.
How are we going to
Well, shall I send it to you in the first instance, and then we can have a catch up about how to take it forward?
So we take things off of here when they're done.
In theory.
Yeah, what it is now. 21.5 benches outside the village hall. I did the spraying, then Greg did the sanding, and did a very good job. So we'll probably take that off, but where are we on the benches?
The sanding's coming out, the sanding's not staying in the grooves, so we probably need dry mix of cement.
It may be a fairly ongoing thing, that really.
Well, that's why if you put a dry mix of cement in, it will stay there and it hopefully will disappear out round. And there's also a raised curve.
That raised curve to be an FAS.
But it's a trip hazard and it needs raising with county.
Well, I thought I'm going to ask county initially.
Yeah, well, there's actually been a complaint made about that, and there's two members of the public said that after the power washing, there was a curve, the pin curve, which is tarmac in, was raised by what we did, and I can tell it wasn't.
No.
Can it just look clearer?
Well, it's clear now, it's not what
You
we're
can see it and it's not
basically-
got the wood
It's
that's
obvious.
held it in. But the power washing made those stones look brilliant. Those look much neater and tidy. And the seats look good.
There was a lot of effort went into the repointing process, and moving forward, we've got to get a wet mixture and then we can look towards doing that.
Well, it's dry.
There's gaps. There is some gaps already forming in it.
I did say at the time I had sand, I don't have
No,
to.
that's right.
Yeah.
So I think we do need to maybe look at something else to go in.
Property management group? Is that?
Definitely have a big there.
Benches, you were about to mention the benches. They weren't on the list that Alan sent to me. I don't think he looks after those ones, so I think we can get on and do something.
Can I ask if anything's happening with the lodge? Or are we still waiting for decisions?
We're still waiting.
Well, the man has been there quite a bit recently.
Yeah.
Until in the summer.
And I think it's a matter of following up with planning department and council home. Again.
No, I can send them an email. We'll just send back to say.
Probably drop into the brook before anything
We
done.
should know how many did.
Enforcement, enforced.
No, you're quite right.
Items for next agenda?
So we've already mentioned a few. We've got on the social media, the red phone box, the bus shelter, and the LTP.
Chair, could I ask an item on the agenda, please? Could I ask for an item on the agenda, please? Firstly, I'd just like to point out that just under 1/4 of our current precept is being spent on the clerk's wages. Those who were on the council last year may well remember I tried to introduce a resolution that the clerk only attends full parish council meetings, getting her back to the 25 hours per month she was employed for, and at the same time saving parishioners money on their precept. You may well remember at that meeting, Council had interrupted my resolution with the following, and I quote, I object, Chair. Sorry, the clerk is required at cemetery meetings. The cemetery is a full committee of 3 councils. Do you still stand by that statement?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. I wrote to Councillor Hood after that meeting, asking him what grounds his objection was based on and where it was laid down that just because it was a joint committee, that the clerk had to attend. It may not surprise you to know that I did get a reply, and I did get a reply because he'd been caught out misleading the council again. I know it was false because at that meeting I also said, whilst I would take his word for it, I would check up on it myself. So I wrote to Stephen Rickett at NALC. For the new councillors, NALC in this sense is the Northumberland Association of Local Councils. We pay a subscription to them for some advice. Stephen Rickett, who was the chair at the time...
No, sir.
At the time...
No.
And the lead council, lead chair, whatever you want to call him, and was also the legal advisor on CC. His reply, and I quote, "I am not aware of any such rule in law." So the people we write to for our advice and their legal advisor said he was not aware of any such rule in law. So again, I'd ask Councillor Hood where it's laid down and why he made that statement. Therefore, with this new information, can I request again that an item be added to the agenda to pass a resolution to limit the clerk's attendance for a 6-month trial period to 4 PC meetings, and I will say any finance meetings involve the precept, because she's the only one with the spreadsheets and understanding of it. So the full PC meetings and any finance meetings involve the precept. Just to put councillors' minds at rest, again I've checked and there is no need for other committees' meetings to produce full minutes the way Claire does for this meeting. The minimum that is required is a record of decisions. So an example, if item 3 on the cemetery committee meeting was to purchase a new bin, then the committee would have its discussion as it does, but the minutes would purely show the decision that was made. So this could be, as an example, the councillor tasked Councillor X to get 3 quotes for a bin, or the council did not make a decision at this meeting and the item is postponed, or the council agreed to purchase a new bin from XYZ and instructed the clerk as the RFO to go ahead with the purchase. The clerk would still publish the agenda for you, she would still book the room for you, but she would just not attend nor write the minutes. But she will publish the minutes that you produce for her. To make it even easier, I would suggest that whoever is writing the minutes stops the meeting at the point the decision is made to ensure you have the wording correct. I.e. the person taking it can just stop me to say, can I confirm the decision for the minutes is XXX? That may extend the meeting by 5 minutes, but it will speed up the writing and the production of the minutes. So just to reiterate, and I'll give you this, Claire, the item on the agenda I would like is, in an effort to reduce the clerk's hours so they fall more in line with her original 25 hours a month that she was employed for, and to save parishioners money, the council will vote on a resolution that for a 6-month trial period, the clerk will only attend 4 PC meetings in the role of clerk. She can also attend finance meetings which discuss the budget precept. Thank you.
You may present that to the parish council, but the parish council will decide what the agenda item is.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, I would think the item will be on the lines of committees are entitled to decide their own manning. They may review it, certainly.
Okay.
I have an item just for consideration for the next agenda in terms of some information about Swollen First School, I believe, is potentially going to close. There was information sort of circulating about a week ago. Obviously, there's potential implications for the school here with students being either brought over here or they're potentially going over to Long Fram. It just occurred to me about during the meeting with the garage and the parking. Is this a way of increasing the parking for potential school children delivery? It was just something to consider, or just to look at. I'm not saying, you know, at the meeting, but just something to consider, to look into.
Okay. Can you be a bit clearer what it is, your point?
Well, I think there are implications for Felton school and the surrounding parking and traffic and pedestrian issues, if there's going to be an increase in traffic and children being delivered from Swollen School in the future, so that you have more information so that you can make better decisions about what's happening within potentially the garages or potentially a road crossing outside on the main street.
That's a complex point which is going to rattle around in various directions.
Well, okay, maybe then not as an agenda item, but maybe as an item to consider for the agenda in the future.
Chair, some years ago there was a talk that would close Swollen School. Some years ago. They did a survey, County Council did a survey, Education Committee did a survey, and they deemed that because of the traffic on the A1, the volume of traffic, and the safety of the children crossing the A1, first school children, down here and back again, it was not safe and it was a road hazard and safety for the children. So that was why Swollen School got money spent on it to upgrade it as opposed to increasing it. That was when the numbers were going down at Felton School.
With respect,
but there is, I believe, a motion going about at the minute. I'll tell you something which is could be confidential, but I'll blow it anyway. There's a mood going, I believe, for a new school to be built on Framlington.
That's
for
it.
all the new estates that are being built. And they're going to bus the children from Swollen to Framlington, and that's absolutely
Councillor Hood is correct that it looks as though there is going to be a planning application to build a new school, and it is in the public domain, so it's not confidential. But there is a number of householders who do not want to send their children to Longfram because it then puts them into a different tier system for schooling. So they're wanting to come across to school to Felton.
We're a quarter of an hour over time, and I'm not really going with this lengthy discussion about possible new school. So I take the point.
That's all. That's yeah.
If it comes up, we need to think about it.
Yeah.
That's it. We don't need to discuss it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Meeting closed at 9:30. Thank you.